Start things off, we're going to talk about cannabis science. Now, a lot of people have heard a lot about cannabis, but we're going to try and give you the facts of the conversation, dispel as many myths as possible, and give you a full understanding of cannabis science, what it means for you, and how you can use it to protect yourself, empower yourself, and make sure you are making informed and sensible decisions. So there's a couple of layers to this cannabis conversation. We get a lot of second-hand information around cannabis products, cannabis safety, and what the law is. What we're going to give you is the core science and the core facts. The public has been given a lot of conflicting information, and a lot of that comes from industrial campaigns, industrial marketing. Secondly, there's a lot of medical misinformation and confusion around the effectiveness of these products, the safety of these products, and also the therapeutic applications of these products. What we're going to do is protect you from this misinformation and give you the essential facts you need to navigate this space. We're going to give you 50 years of cannabis science in just 50 minutes, and so we're going to condense this down. There's going to be a lot of information in this short training, so make sure you watch it again. If you've missed any points, make sure you've learned everything that you possibly can. And then the next phase after learning all this information is making sure you implement it, you and your friends use it, you and your family use it, and your community uses this information. As we start to explore cannabis science and what it means, there's two key fundamentals that you need to be aware of. Firstly, there is the plant side of the conversation that exists, the many years of research that have gone into the plant, and then also the many years of research that have gone into understanding us as humans and our bodies and their functioning. So we're going to simplify this as much as possible for you and equip you with the essential information that has come about from this 50 years of research that's been going on behind the scenes. Cannabis can take many forms, and in its raw form it is a plant, and from that plant we can extract a number of phytochemicals and put those phytochemicals into a number of different products. The oils in cannabis, the terpenes in cannabis, the cannabinoids in cannabis can all be extracted and condensed into either oils, capsules, balms as well, creams that you can rub on your skin. You've seen vape liquids out in the shops already. Of course, we obviously have the buds and flowers themselves, which can be consumed, vaporized, smoked. When we talk about cannabis, you might have heard of hemp as well as cannabis or cannabis sativa, cannabis indica. All cannabis, whether it be hemp or medical grade cannabis, is what is known as cannabis sativa. Now, this is the nomenclature that is used, the scientific language that is used to describe all cannabis plants. Hemp is a product that is primarily used in industrial applications, so you're seeing a lot of bioplastics that can be created from hemp. You're seeing a lot of construction materials that can be created from hemp, and these hemp plants, these hemp lineages of cannabis sativa, are low cannabinoid crops that essentially are just utilized for their fibers, stalks, and seeds. And cannabis, as you might typically know it, has a higher content of phytochemicals within there. We're going to talk more about what those phytochemicals are, but it has more oils, more compounds within the plant that are secreted by the plant, and those are what we extract and use to put into cannabis products, medicines, and to consume as humans. Now, you might have heard of indica and sativa, but after the generations and decades and hundreds of years of interbreeding between all of these crops, there is very little to distinguish these crops other than their chemical content. And so all cannabis, as you might find it, is typically classified as cannabis sativa, and depending on the end use and the goal of the plant cultivation, it is bred for different purposes, and so presents itself either in a high oil variety or in a low oil variety. These are the ways that we distinguish cannabis and hemp, and those are the different functions and purposes of cannabis and hemp, or cannabis sativa as a whole. And both are legal in the UK, both are legal around the world. However, there are strict guidelines around who can actually possess these crops. They must be licensed, they must be under the watchful gaze of governments and the law, and there's a lot of strict regulation around these crops. What we're going to try and do is help you understand those regulations as well, where you stand, what's safe, what's legal, and how to navigate this space safely. So what exactly is inside cannabis? Now, there's a number of different compounds found within the plant and found within the oils that are secreted by the plant. The main constituents that are of importance to consumers and to the public are the phytocannabinoids. Now, these phytocannabinoids include THC, CBD, CBG, and over 120 other different phytocannabinoids. And so we hear a lot about CBD and THC and their wonderful therapeutic applications, their wonderful benefits, but each of the 120 different phytocannabinoids in cannabis have their own unique properties and therapeutic uses. CBD and THC are just two of the over 500 different compounds that you can find within a cannabis plant. We've got terpenes in there, we've got flavonoids in there. Each of those compounds also has their own unique therapeutic properties too. Phytocannabinoids make up just a very small portion of cannabis. They are really the key active chemical constituent that is responsible for the sensation of a high that you receive from cannabis and the therapeutic benefits as well that come from cannabis. These compounds are incredibly safe. The plant itself is incredibly safe. And to give you an idea of just how safe these compounds are, a human would have to consume approximately 1.2 kilos of pure phytocannabinoids in order to actually have some sort of adverse effect, damage their body in some way. Or where the danger comes from is the consumption methods, the product sourcing. Are you actually consuming what you think you're consuming? And then obviously the contamination of that product as well. And so it's important to understand there's a lot more in cannabis than just THC, CBD, phytocannabinoids and terpenes. There's a whole host of traditional plant elements in there too. There's a lot of cellulose, a lot of sugar, a lot of chlorophyll of course as well to help with the photosynthesis. And so when we talk about cannabis, it does become a rather nuanced conversation. There's a lot of extra elements that we need to consider. There's a lot more in that cannabis plant that we need to be aware of. Understanding the actual constituents of cannabis, what's found within the cannabis plant, is really essential. And so when you're finding these products, when you're consuming these products, make sure you know exactly what is in that product, ask for testing certificates, make sure it's being produced responsibly, just so you can protect yourself from any unwanted effects, any potential harms, and any adverse reactions. When we talk about cannabis products, when we talk about CBD products, it's really important to understand that the products that we can purchase over the counter, the products that we might find amongst our friends or in the black market, are very different from the compounds and products that are being used in the research realm. And so you can see here just how different the price discrepancies are. There is a whole lot more refinement, testing, and processing that goes into the compounds that are used in the research world and in the lab compared to over-the-counter products that you'll find online or in shops. Those have had far less diligence over those products, far less testing, far less refinement, and so what you find and hear about in the research is not likely to be reflected in the products that you buy over the counter. The two products are not equal. There's a lot of variation. There's a lot of also contamination. And so it's very important that you understand that what you read in the research and the findings that are found in research and through science are very different from the results that can be achieved through over-the-counter products and what you will just find on the everyday high street or online. So when we talk about cannabis products and the cannabis debate, there's this massive blind spot that the industry, doctors, and the media really overlook. And that is the endocannabinoid system. Now, what we do at GCS is talk about the CBD bug, which is essentially CBD being the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the cannabis debate. There's a lot more to discuss there, and there's a lot more than meets the eye. There's this massive hidden element which is lost in the debate, which is the human element and the endocannabinoid system. It's not just cannabis products that we need to think about, but also our body that we need to think about as well. And so our body is incredibly variable. Our behavior as well also influences our body and our health. Understanding how to use these products safely, where you're sourcing them from, how you are consuming these products, whether you're mixing them with other products alongside cannabis, and as well understanding some of the risky behaviors that you can avoid to make cannabis products safer even before you've touched the product. The products themselves are highly variable. A lot of these products are unregulated, and we really don't know what's inside those products just because they aren't tested thoroughly, they aren't being investigated or scrutinized when it comes to what is in those products. People are often consuming products that have a variable dose. They're either underdosed, overdosed, highly potent, or impotent completely. Oftentimes as well, they're contaminated. They may have heavy metals in there. They might have pesticides in there. All of this is impacting our health in the background. And so if we're just talking about CBD or cannabis or THC, we're overlooking all of these other factors. When we talk about cannabinoids, cannabis, the main element that we need to consider are cannabinoids. First of all, we have phytocannabinoids that are found within the cannabis plant itself. Those are ancient. They've been produced by the cannabis plant as long as the cannabis plant has existed on this planet. There are then also endocannabinoids that our body produces naturally. These are part of human function, they're part of human health. Every cell in the human body produces endocannabinoids in some way, shape, or form, and they are used by the body to essentially control all of the communications in the body that are taking place, that are required to manage all of the cells and all of the organs and systems in your body that contribute to your overall well-being and function as a human. And finally, we've got synthetic cannabinoids, which are cannabinoids that have been created by humans in a lab. Oftentimes we use these to investigate cannabis products or the endocannabinoid system. And these are synthetically engineered, artificially produced cannabinoids, which are many times more potent than the phytocannabinoids you find in cannabis, and obviously other than the endocannabinoids that you find in your body as well. So your body is a machine, it is a network of what are called cells, and there are 32 trillion different cells in the body, all working in tandem, in synchronicity to coordinate you as a human, coordinate your health, organize your body into a functioning machine. And so these are all communicating constantly as we go about our day. They regulate your movements, they regulate your hearing, sound, smell, taste, activity, thoughts, emotions. These are all tightly interwoven communications. The endocannabinoid system is responsible for the management of all of these communications that are required to make the human body work, and this harmony between all of the cells is maintained through the endocannabinoid system and other systems within the body. And this is what regulates your health. And endocannabinoids are the essential element that keep all of this system working and keep all of these 32 trillion cells operational, functional, and healthy. This endocannabinoid system is found right throughout the body in every cell of the body. This includes the skeleton, this includes your muscles, your nervous system, your cardiovascular system, your reproductive system. And so this is why when we consume cannabis, we have such a wide range of effects. And cannabis and the phytocannabinoids and other phytochemical compounds within cannabis affect this human endocannabinoid system that we have. This area of research is incredibly new. Most doctors haven't yet been taught about the endocannabinoid system in medical school. This is really brand new research that hasn't yet made its way into the mainstream. And so we're only just hearing about CBD and cannabis, and we are yet to hear about the endocannabinoid system or even fully understand the endocannabinoid system itself. This is one of the biggest overlooked factors in the whole cannabis debate, in the whole CBD conversation. And it's essential really to understanding why you're hearing everything that you're hearing about cannabis and how you can actually start making better health decisions and better decisions that protect your health and your family and your communities. You will see that there are cannabis oils that people consume. Typically, these are consumed orally. When we consume cannabinoids orally, we're only really getting about 6 to 13% of those cannabinoids being absorbed by the body. Cannabinoids are known as being hydrophobic compounds, which means that they don't like watery environments and they gravitate towards fatty environments. This is why you'll find that cannabinoids are placed within oils such as MCT oil or olive oil. That's to try and help the absorption of those compounds into the body. And one of the biggest challenges researchers face and medics face is how do we get these products reliably into the body so that the body actually absorbs them rather than just those compounds passing through the body and being excreted out. Another method of administration that we can look at is inhalation. We get a higher absorption rate when it comes to inhaling these products or absorbing these through the lungs. Smoking, unfortunately, incredibly damaging to the body. It does work, but it's a very crude method of consumption. And only around 12 to 30% of the cannabinoids that we consume through our lungs are actually absorbed when it comes to smoking. When you smoke cannabis, 90% of the cannabinoids, THC, phytocannabinoids in that plant matter are destroyed, and you're only really absorbing a small proportion of the phytocannabinoids from your plant matter, from your cannabis, from your flowers, which means that most of what you're paying for or consuming is actually destroyed, and the majority of the effect that you feel from cannabis smoking is actually carbon monoxide and a loss of oxygen to your brain. And if you are using a dry herb vaporizer, you can get roughly 90% of the cannabinoids that are within that herb, within that flower, within that product into the bloodstream. You can also absorb them through the skin, and there's a pretty good absorption rate through the skin depending on your age, depending on the condition of your skin, how well you've looked after it. What is important is that we find the right method of administration for what we're looking for when it comes to cannabis consumption. Why are we consuming it? Is it because we've got a bad elbow? Well, transdermal is probably the best route of administration, whereas orally you're only going to get maybe 6 to 13% of that into the body, and a very small portion of that's going to actually make it to your elbow. So if you're applying a cream directly to your elbow, you've got a far better likelihood of having some sort of desired effect from the application of that cream or balm. So this brings us to the end of section 1. That was a quick crash course in cannabis science. We're going to talk more now about cannabis consumption, the social impact of cannabis, and as well the law around cannabis as well, and what the facts are when it comes to the legal status of cannabis and where you stand with regards to that legal status and legal delegation. We'll see you soon in section 2.